Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Fergal Kenny. I'm the founder of Digital Irish, and we're here today to talk about a very innovative Irish firm, NearForm, and what they're doing with COVID tracing. But before we get started here, I just wanted to, for those who aren't familiar with us, I'll just give you a quick reminder about Digital Irish and what we're doing. So Digital Irish, we've been around now about 8-9 years. We aim to promote Irish startups that are looking to sort of grow and expand in the States and make connections for them. But not only that, we intend to be sort of a network for Irish Americans, Irish expats who are in the sort of the startup or the general digital space. We've got over 3,000 discrete members who've been on our at various events. We've hosted over 180 Irish startups in the course of our existence. We do events every sort of like month or so. Obviously, since March, we've been pretty much fully online. And we have a podcast, which you can check out on Spotify or wherever you check out your podcast. And I'll give an update on that shortly. We're sponsorship based, and on the call today, we've certainly got Emer from the Department of Foreign Affairs. So Emer Friel, I'll let you say a word in a second. And we've also got one of our other sponsors, Fiona McEntee, who's an immigration attorney who does great stuff in that arena. And hopefully her life gets easier in the next month or so. But Emer, maybe if we could just have you sort of just say a word or two. Thanks for joining on your part. We'll unmute you.
Thank you, Fergal, and thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm always delighted to join and support the Digital Irish events. You're bringing important stories to the fore, and that's not so easy in a world where there's an awful lot going on. I was just thinking about how this world has greatly changed. I mean, we all know that it has, but a year ago, contact tracing would probably mean trying to track down that really interesting person you've been talking to at the latest Digital Irish event. It means a lot different now. It's like the catchphrase to 2020. But then some things haven't changed either. And one of those is the leadership that comes from Ireland in innovating with technology to tackle global challenges. And I think the other one is also our ethos in helping others. So the story of NearForm, which I'm looking forward to having explored here today, is an exemplary example of such a marrying of those two things. And I'd really like to say that it's great to be able to welcome NearForm virtually to New York City. And I know you've been engaged with Enterprise Ireland and with various colleagues here. So it's wonderful to see you on screen and to be able to hear your story. And I hope that everybody finds it very interesting. And I have a feeling we're all going to learn something from it. So thank you, Digital Irish, for making it happen. And Gan Ire Liv Galer and Finnegy Slán, Gurmaigrif.
Okay, thanks, Emer. Fiona, I'm going to unmute you as well and see if you can say a word or two.
I'll just say something brief. There's a bit of construction on in our building because a random tornado blew the roof off the building a few months ago. So it's a little loud, but I just want to say I'm looking forward to a great event. And yeah, hopefully some different immigration matters that we'll be handling with the next administration. So it's great to see everybody virtually and hope everyone's staying safe and well.
Okay. Thanks, Fiona. And I would add, Fiona's got a great podcast that she started as well. Fiona, can you just remind us the name of the podcast and where they can find it?
Yeah, thanks for that plug. It's Immigration Revelation, and it's available pretty much everywhere you get your podcasts. Maeve Higgins was our most recent guest, and we have some other great guests coming up. So yeah, it's immigrationrevelation.co. is the website, and then there's links to all the podcast platforms there.
Okay, got it. Great, thanks a lot, guys. All right, and I just wanted to, so we're just on the call today, we've got a couple of the board members, so just wanted to do a shout out to Gavin McMahon, Rachel Quigley, Jack Stenson, and we have a new addition. We have a couple of changes, right? Firstly, Marianne Pierce. Her business is going gangbusters at the moment because she's doing, she has a sort of like a webcasting based business, which it's obviously a good time for that. So Marianne is going to be otherwise distracted growing out that business. So I did want to just say thank you so much to Marianne for all of her help over the years. She's done a bang up job just getting us getting us way more professional in how we produce things and trying to sort of have an integrated approach between, you know, in-person and online events, which obviously benefits us now, right? So thank you so much, Marianne, for your help over the years. And I also wanted to just announce that Dave Byrne is joining the board as well. So Dave's, you know, with TikTok currently. I forget the name of the parent company, but TikTok, and before that, Google. He's also going to be the one who's going to be taking over from Patrick McAndrew on our podcast. So we've got a changing of the guard going on in a few different places, but Patrick's moving to be a full-time student. He's been a phenomenal help to us, but you know, just with a really professional podcast. But Dave is gonna pick that up, and we're going to do sort of a transition event where you can meet him and understand a little bit more about his background. But I think a lot of people will be fascinated with, you know, with TikTok and, you know, just given the sort of the topicality of it at the moment. So those are some of the changes coming up. All right, and some of the events that are about to happen. So let me just give you the structure of how we're going to do this call. We're going to try and keep this relatively brief, but you know, we're going to sort of, I'm going to just, you know, just give you the bit of the context, not that anyone really needs extra context around COVID, but, you know, on the phone with us, we've got Larry Breen, who's Chief Commercial Officer of NearForm. I'm going to let Larry sort of introduce himself and give us his background in a minute. I always think it's better coming from him. And then we're going to get into sort of the company. We're going to talk a little bit about how they got into the COVID space and just all about sort of contact tracing, how it works, where it fits in the overall ecosystem. But obviously, you know, we're still in the thick of this thing, you know, of COVID. Nobody really needs reminding of that, right? I mean, it was on October 31st, it was 1 new infection per second in the US. You know, the morbid statistic of 500K deaths potentially by the end of February, which is just absolutely brutal. Right now, we're in New York City. The rate of growth of COVID cases is 3.1%. I got that from my, you know, the stats off my COVID app, which we'll talk about in a second. And that's 4,000 cases a day. So this isn't going away anytime soon, right? So that's the context that we have. Luckily, there's a bunch of different actions to resolve this. And one of those is the contact tracing space. But before we get into that specifically, I want, you know, Larry, if you wouldn't mind just sort of giving us, like, we'll talk about you in a second, but we'd love to get a little bit of an overview on NearForm, your history, you know, the company's history, the company's background. So if you wouldn't mind sort of like telling us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, and great to meet everybody, albeit virtually. So NearForm, we're over nine years old, founded and currently headquartered in Tramore in the southeast of Ireland. We've got 150 odd staff spread across 21 countries. We're in a very lucky position. We're a remote first company. So within the first couple of years of setting up, we started to expand, and we expanded on the basis of remote first. So we recruit talent, best of breed. We don't worry about geographical location. So from that point of view, it means we've obviously got very high-end talent that we're actually able to deploy to our projects. As COVID came along, in terms of day-to-day operation, it didn't actually make any difference to us. So we just kept tipping along as we normally do. So happy days. NearForm, we're an accelerated solution delivery business. So what that basically means is we do software development, digital modernization and transformation projects for large enterprises typically. And what we do is we build projects, you know, software for people. We build it, you know, highly scalable, highly secure, high performant, and we do it extremely quickly. So where others will be spending weeks getting projects stood up, we'll get it stood up in days, and get people to POC and MVP stage, you know, in very short order. So extremely high end. And then obviously we'll work with our enterprise clients into bigger, longer deployments, you know, which can last, you know, a couple of years. So fundamentally, that's what we do. Specialize very much within the whole JavaScript web space, and that's what we've actually been all about. Our predominant markets are Ireland, UK, Europe, and the US. So we've been, quite successful over the, the last 9 years. We've built a reasonably strong customer base. We've got a very strong reputation with our customers. And again, the majority of our business comes from referrals and references from those kind of folks. We've also spent a huge amount of time, and our roots are very much deep, and it becomes important when we start talking about the COVID story, very deep within the whole open source community. So we've been a major contributor to a lot of very key open source projects that have been going on for a long time. I think we have something like 1 billion NPM downloads a month, sort of, that have been in some way worked on or influenced by a member of the NearForm team. So, kind of significant, and we continue to sort of drive that forwards, and it sits as part of the ethos of what we actually do. And as we see open source software become a bigger part of everyone's ecosystem, whether they know it or not, obviously it lends to that whole piece, and it makes life a lot easier and better and scalable for folks that are out there. So that's kind of NearForm in a nutshell.
And maybe just, could you give us the layman's version of Node.js and just, that's the crux of what you're doing, and just how beneficial that is for, developing things in a rapid manner?
Yeah, so fundamentally we use Node and we use React Native in the majority of cases. So again, we're very much looking at sort of web technologies. So what we're able to do is obviously to build both back end and front ends, again, using the latest modern practices that are out there. So best in class delivery methods within the whole software sector. Obviously, we're cloud agnostic. We work with all the different clouds, AWS, Azure, GCP, IBM, whoever it is you actually want to play with. And what we do is we basically, from a Node point of view, is obviously, again, we've helped build that whole project and drive it forward. So we'll be the major contributor to that. What that allows us to do is to create, again, within that whole new microservice environment, is take a lot of legacy systems or startup systems. We're able to build the complete solution, back end and front end. So historically, we've seen a lot of businesses out there that specialize in one or the other. From a NearForm point of view, is obviously we've built that speciality that allows us to create highly performant, high-speed apps. Obviously with the levels of protections and securities that would, obviously any enterprise is actually going to want, allows us to create those scalable solutions, but do them at pace. And what we do is obviously we use those languages. We've built a lot of what we would call accelerators. So it's effectively codified learnings. We move that together with open source elements. And what it does, it allows us to get up and running and get projects started extremely quickly. So for a startup business or a startup project, where normally they take a month or two to get themselves up and running and getting started, even if they're using, obviously a suitable vendor. With us, we'll typically get to a demonstrable outcome within a week or two of actually starting the project. So we move extremely quickly. Obviously wrapped around that, we have the whole, we have a design practice that obviously works on the whole UX design. We have a DevOps, again, looking at all of the infrastructure and making sure that obviously we're fulfilling all of those needs and making sure it's compliant with, depending on the industry, obviously all the standards that actually sit out there. And then naturally we have QA and then ongoing support and maintenance. So we build, but we also then support and operate for those clients that actually want it. And again,
Larry,
go ahead.
As a lot of this is sort of open source, and it is an open source project. What's the business model look like if it's effectively not based on proprietary code?
Yeah, so we're a professional services company rather than a product company. So, but obviously we're building products. So we're building products on people's behalf. So if we take the COVID app, which obviously is the primary focus of this, we built that in conjunction with the HSE, so the Irish government. We built that, worked in a team with them collaboratively. They brought in a bunch of other partners because, again, it's a big thing to kind of work out and understand all the different facets of it. We were the core technology partner that actually did all the building and coding. Once we had that up and running, then we took that project and we published it as an open source. Now, we did it for two reasons. One, we wanted to obviously create transparency. So one of the key issues around contact tracing is obviously concerns around privacy and Big Brother spying and all that kind of trust issues. So throughout it, we obviously made sure that privacy first was of paramount importance. And open source was kind of the final piece of that to say, look, anybody who has an interest, any of the conspiracy theorists or anybody else can literally look at every line of code and see that there's nothing nefarious in there. But what it also does is it allows for that project now to be available to other countries. And we have other countries that are not just using NearForm, but are using other vendors to actually take that core project and then build upon it to obviously create their solutions. How does that work as a commercial model for us? We've been doing open source obviously for years and years. So what it allows us to do is we continue to build the expertise within the delivery and execution of those strategies. So what we don't need to do is to continue to repeatedly charge a customer to build the same thing over and over and over again. So we've built it, it's there, it's open source, so we can now take it off the shelf as part of an open source license, bring it into a project. And what people are engaging NearForm for is our expertise and our implementation skills. So we're able to take all of those components and put it together. So a very easy analogy for people to get their heads around is, obviously, if you buy a plot of land, so let's say we got 2 plots of land and on there are the materials to build a house. From an open source point of view is I can give you the plan and Fergal, you can go ahead and build your own house. You've got the land, you've got the parts, off you go and build it. And here's the plan that tells you how to do it. That's the non-NearForm way. Or in the other plot is you can come to Larry and say, hey guys, you know what you're doing. You actually design these plans and all the pieces. Can you build a house? Now, the question I would ask to people is, which house do you want to end up living in for the rest of your days? Personally, I want the one built by the guys that actually know what they're doing rather than the guys that are making it up as they go along based on a document they didn't create. And that's where NearForm actually come into it. And that's where our expertise at doing that. You know, the second thing that sits in there and differentiates us out in the marketplace is our ability to do that at speed. So again, time is money. We've been hearing that for years and years and years. You know, time is money. We have to be able to get out there, get people up and running and get the, you know, strategies executed. We're seeing the world get faster, businesses getting faster, technology getting faster. So our ability to deliver becomes, you know, a speed, get to market, but we have to do it in such a way that there's no cracks or vulnerabilities. As we all know, there's plenty of people out there that will pull down systems and exploit issues if you're not careful about it. So again, that's what we bring to the table.
Tell me how it went down with the HSC. Like, how did that sort of like happen, and how did you manage to sort of like port it over to the States and New York, New Jersey?
Yeah, absolutely. So HSC, obviously, we're dealing with. So go back to the beginning of March. You know, getting to the thick of COVID. COVID is starting to become a real issue. Infection rates are high. They're looking at all the strands that they can actually pull on to see how they can actually combat. Contact tracing was a core component and remains a core component of any sensible country or state or entity dealing with it. Now, within contact tracing, you have the manual side of it. So folks on telephones ringing you up and obviously talking you through certain things. That has certain limitations. What the HSC identified is obviously if we could bring a digital element to it and automate some of that, one, it makes it more efficient, it makes it more effective. How do we do that? They, you know, came up with those ideas and did a whole ton of work and then said, hey, listen, we need a technology partner that can actually do it. The criteria was we needed somebody that obviously could deliver a highly scalable, government-based, super secure, highly performant system. We needed somebody who could actually deliver it at speed. So again, time's of the essence when you're dealing with a pandemic. So everything was moving in hours, minutes, and days rather than weeks, months, years. That would be normal in a government project. And they needed somebody that could really stand over the whole data privacy and protection side of it. So somebody, again, from the open source community. And going back to what we said earlier in terms of at NearForm, we kind of ticked all of those boxes. So one Saturday morning, Kino Madine, the founder of the business and current CEO, he got a telephone call one morning from somebody in the HSC IT office and said, hey, this is what we're looking to do. Is it something of interest for NearForm? Obviously, you've kind of floated to the top in terms of you fulfill all the criteria. We said, yeah, obviously we'd love to do it. We'd love to do it from a business opportunity point of view, but more it's, you know, it's one of those projects that you really get a buzz out of, a real good feel factor. We're able to contribute. We spun up a team that night and got them started. And within 10 days, we delivered their first app. So we gave them something that they could actually take to their testers and start actually really playing with it and seeing how it would actually work. For them, that was kind of a sort of a unique experience that we could move that kind of fast and at that kind of pace. Again, remember, from a government point of view, typically these kind of projects are measured in years, at best months. We were doing this in days. And even for our enterprise customers, they find it quite startling about how quickly we can actually get moving. When we first started that project, we identified a whole bunch of technical limitations. So back in March, Apple and Google weren't working together, weren't really aware of exposure notification per se. So again, because we're so active within the actual tech community, we obviously have links directly into, you know, the developer support networks within both those organizations. Engaged in conversations, which again, other parties around the globe are all doing, and say, here are the deficits within your current platforms, preventing us from making a really, you know, solid, viable solution. They took that on board, built out the exposure notification service. A couple of months later, again, we've been working with them all the way through that. And we then pivoted the HSC and the Irish government from the original app, and we built them a second app. We actually ended up building them 6 apps. And again, the 6 apps were designed from a testing point of view and looking at behavioral studies. So we built them at 6 apps. They could take it out to their testing pool and again, obviously work that through, and ultimately we launched it. So that was Ireland. We got Ireland up and running. You know, again, one of the keys to this is trying to get more people obviously to adopt it. We launched it. There was a huge amount of work went in before the launch, again, from the Irish government and their partners, again, on the testing and verification to make sure all the questions were properly answered, to get the communication and get everybody. So all folks that were going to talk about it, influencers, politicians, etc., were all delivering the same message out to the population. And as a consequence, we saw the highest and fastest adoption of any country worldwide, and that still maintains as that kind of flag for the Irish folks.
What type of numbers are we talking about, Larry, adoption wise?
So we broke 1.2 million within the first sort of 48 hours in terms of number of people that downloaded it, which was just unbelievable.
And what percentage would be fully sort of opting in their data?
So again, remember, from a data point of view, there's no data exchange. So it's all done from a privacy point of view. It's all anonymous. So we don't actually take any person's data. So we don't need to. The only piece of data that's actually in there is your telephone number or your contact number. So we do have the feature as an opt-in. If a user wants to, they can put in their telephone number. So if they do get a contact event, so they get an alert to say they've been in contact with somebody, it will push that number up to a physical queue for them to be called back by a HSE representative to talk them through it. We were surprised, but we saw something like an 85% adoption, you know, of that particular feature within it. So the vast majority of people were happy to give that number and obviously have that contact trigger. Not every country has gone down that road. Again, it's balancing that whole privacy and side of it. And as we've rolled this out across, you know, we've got 9 live. We know there's a couple of other countries that are actually working on the underlying open source code at the moment. So, you know, we've got 10 or 12 folks out there that will actually have this solution.
So running the risk of actually having you repeat yourself a little bit, I think it's still useful to maybe, if you wouldn't mind, just walking, you know, the people on the call through this sort of the user experience from downloading and how the actual app works end to end. Would you mind doing that? And understanding you might repeat yourself a little bit in doing so. Yeah,
no, absolutely not a problem. So fundamentally, users download the app. So the link that you shared in the chat here, or again, it's down to each government or state or public health authorities, obviously advertisers, get that link out to folks. They go into their app store or their Google Play Store, whichever it is, download the app as they would normally. Once they open it, again, there's slight variances between each deployment. So we build them uniquely for each country or each state, obviously to deal with their own personal needs. But fundamentally, they just go through a series of permissions. So, you know, are you happy to use this? Are you happy to you know, to enable Bluetooth on your phone? Are you, you know, do you give permissions for exposure notification APIs to be used? So again, everything is from an opt-in point of view. Once you click those permissions, that's it. It's working. Effectively, sit it in your pocket or your purse, your handbag, or wherever you actually keep your phone. And all the while, Bluetooth is sitting in the background. And what it's doing is it's basically broadcasting and listening. So it's broadcasting an anonymous ID that changes on a frequent basis. So it's just broadcasting it out for any other app to listen to. And it's obviously listening to all the other apps. So it collects all those anonymous IDs that come in from others, and it stores it locally. And all it does, it takes that anonymous ID. It doesn't know who you are or where you came from or any of the rest of it. It's literally just an anonymous ID. It tells us the attenuation value. So it tells us the distance and the amount of time that that anonymous ID's device was within your proximity. And it stores it and does nothing with it, just parks it there. What the app also then does is it reaches out to a central server and pulls down those users' anonymous IDs that have been diagnosed as having COVID. So for me as a user, if I'm diagnosed, I go and I have a test and the test comes back positive, my health authority rings me up and says, hey, Larry, sorry to tell you, you are positive. Have you been using the app? Yes, you have. Are you prepared to share your keys? So these anonymous ID or keys. If I say yes, and again, it's totally optional, it's an opt-in, I basically get given a one-time security code that allows for the keys that I've stored and generated within my app to be pushed up to the central server. Everybody else pulls them down. And then in your pocket, what it's doing is every 2 to 4 hours, depending on the app that you're running, what it does, it basically does a cross match. And it says, of the list of things I've collected, doesn't match this list that I've just pulled down from the server that tells me these are infected. If it sees a match, what it then does is it makes a calculation based on time and distance. So in the US, it's 6 feet and 15 minutes. If you fulfill that criteria on a contact, it will then pop a contact alert. So your phone will go ding, ding, you've had a contact event, and it will follow, again, the public health advice in terms of what to do. For those countries that have opted to allow a contact number to be in there, that contact number gets pushed straight to the call center, and you put in a queue for somebody to ring you up and say, hey, Fergal, I hear you've had an alert. What can we do for you? Well, they actually don't say, hey, Fergal, they say, hey, sir, because obviously they have no idea who you are. You're just an anonymous ID. And then they'll take you through a process of, either getting you tested or recommending what you should do.
And in the case of New York City, who would call you?
So all of the public health authorities have manual contact centers, and they have an outbound queue that they'll obviously sit it into. Now, for some, it's actually run and employed by HC folks. The majority of them are using third-party call center companies that actually take care of it. And we obviously partner with them and obviously integrate their systems into the app. So, there's a nice continuous flow that actually sits with them.
Okay. So I know, the privacy sounds phenomenal, but what are there any use cases where, I can sort of understand a situation where someone might want to actually declare their status, right? Let's say if you're, planning to meet someone for, to play sports with them or something like that, right? Where you want to say, full disclosure, I'm clean, right? Is there an angle to sort of take that track with the app?
Yeah, so again, we've continued to explore that. So there's an angle in terms of the roadmap of where the app will evolve to. We're looking at, so there's things like digital passports that are along that same kind of lines. We're looking at how you book tests. We're looking at how you manage vaccines as vaccines start to come out and actually go out to the population. We've also built an add-on to it that allows you to check into venues. So pubs or clubs or stadiums or whatever else, you can check in. And again, it just gives you and those entities obviously better controls that are actually in place. The key to contact tracing is getting users to adopt it. So what we've tried to do as part of those recommendations is just deal with the focus. So the primary focus is getting that contact event activity running within people's pockets. A number of countries have literally just gone for that very basic thing with no real interaction. The majority of the US states and the HSC in Ireland, we've also put in a symptom tracker, symptom monitor, and a news alert feed. So, you made reference to some of the statistics you were giving out there. You got it from your app. Again, we've built those feeds that are actually sitting in there. We've also provided symptom monitors, so allow people to actually monitor their symptoms. And that just, one, it keeps people engaged, but secondly, it allows when you do, if you do become infected, and that gets confirmed, it allows then when you're engaging with others to understand when you first had symptoms. Personally, I can't remember what happened 14 days ago. So I couldn't tell you whether I had a sniffle last week or didn't have a sniffle last week. So if I suddenly popped up and was diagnosed as having COVID, I couldn't really tell you when my symptom onset dates were. So we start to build it out, but we got to be very careful. What we don't want to do is to overburden things. So again, lowest common denominator, making it nice and easy for everybody to actually use, get the numbers up and running with the fundamentals of it, which is the contact tracing piece. And then over time, we can start to evolve those services. Because you rightly identified, as part of your opening gambit, and Emer mentioned it as well, COVID isn't going away anytime soon. So as much as we had great news out from Pfizer and some of the others this week that, vaccines and stuff are coming to the fore, we have to get the globe vaccinated. So, it's going to take some time. So the reality is we're probably planning on an 18 to 24 months of being in the world of COVID before we can say, yeah, we're actually out of it. During that time, the more people we have obviously using these apps, staying protected, is the faster we can actually see our exit away from that and manage it.
And can I ask, all these separate apps, right? So New York, New Jersey, PA, let's include Ireland for the sake of it, because we've got an Irish-American crew here. Do they share the same back end where if someone is traveling between New York and Pennsylvania, or New York and New Jersey, or back to Ireland, where you can see that sort of potential for cross-contamination there?
Mm-hmm. So no, they don't share the same back end. So each state or country has its own back end, its own front end. So it's a completely set up system. So it's not multi-tenanted or shared in any way. However, we do create interoperability. So within the US, we have interoperability between states. So not just within, so NearForm have delivered obviously Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, New Jersey. When we originally built those, we created interoperability between those states. That's now expanded where Apple, Google, Microsoft, and APHL came together, and they've created a centralized server for the US. And what we basically do is we send all of those diagnosis keys to that central server. So anybody else using the exposure notification service, whether it's delivered by NearForm or a different vendor, they're able to pull those down. So at the moment, Fergal, for you, you're able to travel between those states. So obviously only states that actually have a contact tracing solution up and running using ENS, but yeah, you're able to cover it. Within Europe, we've also worked with obviously our European partners, and we've developed the European Federated Server, which again does a similar kind of service for European states. So I think it's ourselves, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and there's one other are now on it. And obviously we'll bring on more states and countries. And then within the UK, because within the UK, obviously we delivered Gibraltar, Jersey, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. And then NHS Digital did Wales and England. We've also created, and again, it's a system provided by NearForm, again, as a central service. So for all UK folks, again, they do that on a local basis. So you can travel throughout the UK, regardless of which app you're using, you've got that level of protection. And this all originated, again, in conjunction with the HSE. So HSE, first to market, greatest adoption, got it out there. They are the key founders that sit behind it. But then obviously we had to look at it from the island of Ireland. So we had Irish government went first. Northern Ireland decided they want to build one for them. And we created that interoperability, which was the first interoperability globally for us to actually ensure people on the island of Ireland are covered, so borders become less of an issue.
Tell us about it. Tell us about the corporate angle. Is there an angle for selling this to corporates as well? And what are your plans there?
Yeah, so the key issue that sits behind it is obviously the exposure notification service API layer that sits within the operating system of Apple and Google. That is restricted to government state entities only. So to get that entitlement, you have to prove that you're a government at state level. They won't even do it at a county and city level. I think there's one exception to that out there, but we haven't seen any more that are actually out there. And part of that, again, is what they're trying to do is to maintain, you know, the confidence in the whole privacy side of it, that it isn't getting commercialized and abused and taken to the next level. So in terms of the app itself, no, you can't have a corporate app, but what you can do is leverage the statewide app with some of the corporate activities. So we're seeing, and we're working with a bunch of different partners looking at sort of campus monitoring and obviously employee monitoring and that kind of side of it. And again, going back to what you said earlier is, if you're able to take a feed from the state contact tracing app to say, hey, listen, I'm actually using the app and it has been running for the last 14 days and I haven't popped up an alert, therefore my risk profile scoring that you're doing obviously in the corporate app becomes lower and is affected by that. If I don't have that statewide app, then obviously it puts a higher risk scoring and therefore those apps. And we are working with a bunch of folks on those kind of apps and how that actually works together and tying that in.
So I suppose that's a segue to how we sort of always try and wrap up, Digital Irish chats with innovative companies is like, what your ask is, right? I mean, maybe you can sort of explain, in looking to expand this, right? And you don't have to limit it to COVID, right? I mean, obviously you explained earlier, right, that, the services that NearForm sort of provide, span way beyond COVID, but maybe you can answer in the, just in the form of a sort of a COVID response and another response, right? But when it comes to COVID and you're looking to sort of expand these apps to other sort of other jurisdictions, give us an idea on sort of the titles, and the people that you're going after in these organizations, so we can have a think on your behalf and see if we can make some connections. And the same, yeah, I mean, so start with that, and then maybe just tell us where the action is for you also on the commercial side of things too, and as you're looking to build out your business.
Yeah, so fundamentally on the COVID side, we're typically talking to either secretaries or deputy secretary of health. So folks at that kind of level, so that are steering health departments, public health authorities, or typically the governor's office. So again, the governor's office have emergency cares funding to deal with COVID. They typically are determining where it is because obviously we're doing it at state level. So anybody that's at that level or has influence into that level, we'd love to have a conversation. Again, the ask is, get them the message out there to as many people as you possibly can within networks. We're not even super worried about whether, they decide to use NearForm and NearForm, underlying code. It's more a case of we need everybody in the world with one of these apps in their pocket. That's how we get that level of protection. So our push at the minute over the coming months is to get, all 50 states in the US covered by a COVID app. It's the fastest way we're actually going to get business back and running for everybody. Obviously, if NearForm are positioned to obviously deliver a lot of that, we're currently the world leader. It's the most proven and most used system out there. It makes sense. It's relatively risk-free for people to actually use it rather than to spin up something fresh. Is great, but ultimately we just want it out there. And the reason we want it all out there is the second ask is, our primary business is around delivering to the enterprise, delivering within the health service, is delivering, longer term solutions with people, is building out apps, building out technology transformations, moving people from legacy systems into a new area of technology. And again, what we're looking to do is to get more of the names. So NearForm has a very solid reputation within the whole tech space. It's more about getting us widely known within the business communities to understand, if you've got a startup who needs to move fast, high quality, high performance. If you're an enterprise, doesn't matter how big you are, NearForm obviously are able to deliver. We've worked with a lot of the big players that are out there in the marketplace. Pretty much everybody on this call at some stage or other is using NearForm written code without actually even knowing it. We're the guys that sit behind the scene and actually do that sort of elite push forwards. So again, it's just about getting that message out there. So as the economies start to open up, as people start to embrace the new norm, and we do see the new norm being very heavily influenced by COVID. So pre-COVID digital transformation was something that was, actively happening in the marketplace. It was driving forwards at a certain pace. COVID has created a little bit of a blip as people have, go through that uncertain time. But what we're seeing is rapid acceleration in terms of, user behaviors and therefore digital transformation platforms actually going forwards. And, for us to be able to help businesses actually react to that at speed, so they don't miss the opportunity coming out the other side of this. That's what we're all about, and people want to come to us. We can get you up and running within weeks and months rather than years.
Are there like more stronger verticals than that you have than others? I know listening to Cian, it looked like you started out doing a lot of work in the publishing space.
Yeah, so we've been pretty much vertical agnostic from the point of view is we focus more on the technology rather than on the the vertical expertise. So how we work is we bring the technology chops to the table. We expect the product owners, so our clients obviously, to bring the understanding of the market that they're actually in. But yeah, we've done a lot within the whole publishing space. We've done a lot within streaming and media side of it. We've done a huge amount within the whole e-commerce, ticket selling, product selling, worked with the likes of, Walmart, Uber, Netflix, Ancestry.com. Do you know what I mean? So there's a huge amount of folks out there that we've actually worked with. So, that side of it is very much on an agnostic basis. And we'll continue to drive forward and expand that side. We've also got a particular, and we started out this year very much within the whole health tech space. Health tech, we do feel is a strong passion. It's something that it really is going to change going forwards. Patient outcome influenced by technology is important. And again, we're able to step into that space as the technology partner and let others do the clinical and operational side of it. And we just, wrap up the whole technology side very, very quickly and securely.
Okay, great. I'm going to wrap it up with you in a second, but I like doing this slightly backwards, right? If we could tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you came to NearForm. There's a good Irish story here, so maybe you can.
Sure. So a little bit about me. So I'm currently in Tramore, as I said, where we're headquartered. I was actually born and raised here, did the usual Irish thing, finished school, headed off to London to university with the intent of being away for 3 years and then getting back because, I loved living here. It took me 23 years to actually move back. And during that time, I got involved in setting up multiple companies worldwide. Got very much involved with, again, taking businesses with high potential and obviously high growth rates and executing strategies on those. Cian O'Madine, who set up the company, literally lived 6 doors up from me growing up on the street in the center of town. He's a few years younger than me, but obviously we'd be aware and know one another from that point of view. When I moved back, obviously moved in the same kind of circles and had conversations. He built a superb company and got to a point where he needed to look at, growing the business with some accelerated growth. That's pretty much what I do on an international scale. I've been doing this across the globe for many years. The opportunity, I was exiting out of the company I was with at the time. We were looking at exit strategies. Ultimately, we sold it to Uber. He said, Larry, do you want to come on board and help us make a success of NearForm? So I was like, hey, somebody I've known pretty much all my life. Yeah, great in my hometown and deliver on a global basis. Happy days.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks so much, Larry. That was really informative. That was great. And I suppose, like in response to your ask, right? Firstly, the link is there, right? I think if you could try out the app, everyone, if you could tell your friends about it, right? Maybe tell your friends about it in conjunction with an article about it as well. I made the mistake of just posting the link before, but just people want that extra level of certainty before they play with this stuff. But we got just 1 or 2 questions we're just going to run by here, right? Someone was just asking if you have any traction in Illinois. I think Fiona may have a contact for you in the governor's office there.
We're pushing again. We're starting early stage conversations, but we have no serious traction. So if somebody's got somebody in the governor's office, please reach out and let me know. We'd love to hook up with them.
Okay. And there was one other question, which was just about why did the UK struggle to get their app right? And maybe that's to your point about that was, it sounded like the NHS did Britain or England and Wales separately. Is that right?
Yeah, so England, Wales stayed on their own path. So they effectively had 2 attempts at doing it. You know, the challenge that you have with the whole COVID piece is COVID as a thing obviously has evolved and come upon us very, very quickly. We've all had to react and pivot and move forwards. We haven't always all got it right. From an England point of view, they moved very quickly. They didn't necessarily, you know, and again, you can be critical if you want to be, but fundamentally, you know, it evolved at a rapid pace of knots. They were on a particular path and trajectory. It turned out that that path and trajectory wasn't the right one, and they had to change and move across onto a different vendor. That just kind of happens. We've seen it. They're not the only country that went down that path. A whole bunch of folks. And to be fair, us with the Irish government, we went down that path, and we're going a similar direction to those. But you know, to be fair to the Irish government and the HSC in conjunction with ourselves, we paid a lot of attention and saw the signs very early on. We're able to, you know, pivot our move and go from that centralized version to a decentralized version, and therefore get it out, you know, super successfully. The challenge that the, you know, England and Wales have now at the minute is obviously there was such a lot of bad media press around that whole pivot because people didn't really understand it. Now that it's out there as a reasonably successful app, you know, they're still taking a bit of a beating from press and media.
Got it. Okay. So Larry, if it's cool with you, I'm going to share your email address here, right? If that's cool.
Perfect.
No spam to Larry, everyone. Okay. So that's there. And then I'm going to just like send a link here, which is just like where you can see the links to all the COVID alert apps for New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Ireland, Scotland, right? So you can see it all there. So thanks so much for your time. Like, much appreciated. That was a great overview. And you know, just like to remind everyone, we like to make connections for people. So if you can think of angles for Larry, either in the corporate world, right, in the regular business, or in the state government arena, you know, he's all ears on that. Okay. So Larry, thanks so much for your time. We're going to just, you know, as per our usual events, we're going to go into a separate breakout room. You don't have to stay for this, Larry, right? But we're just going to, as we don't get an opportunity to sort of like interact with each other in person, you know, in events these days, we're going to just go into a couple of breakout rooms.
No problem. Well, it was really nice meeting you all. If I can help anybody in any way, you've got my details. Please feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks again, Larry. Cheers.
Take care, guys.
All right. Cheers.